A young nurse stumbled into the clinic, eyes unnaturally bright. Something moved beneath her skin, visible, worm-like ripples across her forearm. Without warning, she lunged at the receptionist, her movements jerky yet purposeful, as if controlled by unseen strings. Mesa Verde, a small border town in Arizona's southernmost region, had changed in the past week. What began as isolated cases, strange behavior, unexplained aggression, had become a pattern. 17 residents showed the same symptoms. Something moving beneath their skin, followed by heightened aggression and loss of behavioral control. The local medical center, a single-story building with just 20 beds, was now overflowing. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the town's only neurologist, feared they were facing something entirely unknown. Standard protocols were failing. The nearest CDC team was 3 days out, delayed by flooding in Texas. The town's makeshift isolation ward, the high school gymnasium, was reaching capacity. Sheriff Dawson had established a perimeter, but without federal support, containing the situation seemed impossible. The most alarming development: traditional sedatives barely affected the infected. Their strength seemed supernatural, breaking restraints that should have held patients twice their size, while their pain response appeared completely suppressed. The helicopter landed at dusk. Colonel Jackson Miller, Ph.D. retired, stepped onto cracked asphalt with the precision of someone still moving to military rhythm despite his 65 years. His weathered face and silver hair contrasted with the alertness in his eyes as he surveyed the scene. "That's our help? A senior citizen?" whispered a paramedic. Sheriff Dawson silenced him. That senior citizen headed the Army Medical Research Institute's Biodefense Division for 20 years. Now he teaches at Arizona State, but consults on special cases. He left unsaid what everyone would soon learn. Jackson Miller had seen this before. "Show me patient 0, Miller requested immediately, ignoring offers of rest after his journey. In the isolation room, he examined the nurse, Sarah Collins, now restrained and semi-conscious. Using a specialized light, he examined the movement beneath her skin. "Sentinel nematorph," he stated clinically. "South American parasitic worm. Enters through skin contact, migrates through the bloodstream, ultimately attaches to the central nervous system, where it can influence host behavior." "How is that possible?" Dr. Vasquez asked. "They secrete compounds that affect neurotransmitter production," Miller explained. "Nature's neural hijackers. But they shouldn't be in Arizona." The situation deteriorated during the briefing. 3 more cases arrived, all medical staff who treated early patients. Miller's examination confirmed his fears. "It's adapting to transmission through bodily fluids," he announced to the crisis team. Original strain required direct parasite-to-skin contact. This variant transmits through blood, possibly saliva. Security footage revealed more. Infected patients appear to deliberately attempt spreading the parasite, sometimes attacking others with improvised weapons to create open wounds. "They're not just infected," Sheriff Dawson realized. "They're being controlled." Miller nodded grimly. "The parasite has one evolutionary goal: reproduction and spread. It's hijacking human hosts to achieve that purpose." The hospital, meant to contain the outbreak, had become its epicenter. 23 medical staff were now showing early symptoms. And the most disturbing news: 2 infected patients had escaped the perimeter. Standard treatments proved ineffective. Antiparasitic medications barely slowed the organism. Surgical removal was attempted on one patient, but abandoned when the worms retreated deeper into tissue when approached with instruments. "It's almost like they sense threats," Dr. Vasquez said, reviewing the surgical recording. "They do," Miller confirmed. "These organisms have rudimentary threat perception." The local law enforcement was overwhelmed. Deputies who'd restrained violent patients began showing symptoms themselves. The isolation ward had become dangerous, with collective aggressive behavior increasing as infection density grew. CDC advised evacuation, but Miller opposed, moving infected individuals risked spreading the parasite beyond containment. Alone in the makeshift command center, Miller studied microscopy samples. His mind drifted to the classified operation in Colombia, 1989. His team had encountered the original strain, a special forces unit exposed during jungle operations. They developed countermeasures, protocols buried in classified archives. He'd never imagined he'd need that knowledge again, certainly not in retirement. But the mental checklist from 30 years ago remained intact. Temperature control, neuroblocking agents, targeted elimination. Miller assessed available resources with military efficiency. The hospital's limited medical equipment would be insufficient. However, the local pharmacy could provide base compounds for his formulation. The high school chemistry lab had essential mixing equipment. Most crucially, he identified the meat processing plant at the edge of town with its industrial refrigeration system, perfect for the temperature control phase. He drafted requirements for emergency equipment from the Army's research division, specialized ultrasound devices, certain compounds not commercially available. A military transport could deliver within 8 hours. Until then, they needed to contain the situation with existing resources. "We need to establish a command structure," Miller told Sheriff Dawson. "This is now a battlefield." As Miller prepared the first treatment protocol, his mind flashed back to Fort Detrick, 1990. His research team working around the clock after the Columbia incident, developing countermeasures against neuroparasites. The military approach had been methodical. Understand the enemy's vulnerabilities, exploit them systematically, always maintain tactical flexibility. Parasites have 3 vulnerabilities, he taught his team: environmental sensitivity, metabolic requirements, and reproductive imperatives. The training for these biological threats had been unlike conventional warfare preparation. They developed a system approaching biological threats as multi-stage operations: containment, neutralization, and elimination, with precise protocols for each phase. Now, in the school-turned-crisis center, Miller found himself reaching for that training, translating military biodefense protocols into civilian application, a conversion his years at the university had prepared him for. Miller outlined his 3-phase plan to the assembled team of doctors, nurses, and law enforcement. Phase 1, temperature control. These organisms become sluggish at temperatures below 70 degrees. We'll convert the meat processing facility into a treatment center. The cold won't kill the parasites, but will slow their neural control, giving us a window to work. He sketched the setup on a whiteboard, military precision in every line. Phase 2, neuroblocking. I formulated a compound that interrupts the parasite's chemical control of the nervous system. It's a modified version of what he called himself, what was developed for similar scenarios. His final diagram showed ultrasound equipment positioned around a patient's head. Phase 3, targeted elimination. These parasites retreat from surgical tools, but they can't escape precisely targeted ultrasonic waves. The equipment coming from the Army Research Lab will allow us to eliminate the organisms without invasive procedures. Miller transformed civilian spaces with military efficiency. The meat processing facility's main floor became a temperature-controlled treatment center, with processing lines repurposed as patient transport systems. The high school chemistry lab, under his direction, became a pharmaceutical production line, with teachers and students with chemistry backgrounds following his exacting protocols to produce the neuroblocking compound. Most impressively, he established a military-style decontamination protocol for all personnel, adapted from battlefield biological weapon exposure procedures. Everyone moving between zones followed strict containment measures. In biodefense, we operate on the principle that invisible threats require visible discipline, Miller explained to Sheriff Dawson, who marveled at how quickly the chaotic response had transformed into an ordered operation. The enemy may be microscopic, but our response must be precisely coordinated. Miller organized locals into functional units with clear command chains. Dr. Vasquez headed medical assessment. Sheriff Dawson managed security and containment, and the high school chemistry teacher supervised production. Each received crash course training in biological threat response. "You're not civilian volunteers anymore," Miller told them during briefing. "You're a response unit. Maintain communication. Follow protocols precisely. Improvise only when absolutely necessary." When a young deputy questioned the rigid approach, Miller's response reflected decades of military experience. In biological threat scenarios, individual heroics get people killed. System discipline saves lives. Trust the process. The team adapted to military precision with surprising speed. Within hours, civilians were communicating with tactical clarity, reporting in structured formats, and executing complex protocols with minimal confusion. Testimony to Miller's leadership and training ability. Phase 1 began at dawn. Teams in protective gear transported the first 20 patients to the refrigerated facility. The temperature drop had the predicted effect. Within 30 minutes, the erratic movements and aggression subsided as the parasite's activity slowed. Miller administered the first neuroblocking compound himself, monitoring reactions with scientific precision while simultaneously directing the next transport team via radio. When an unexpected seizure occurred in one patient, he adjusted the compound's concentration instantly, demonstrating the battlefield adaptability that had made him legendary in military medicine. By noon, 63 patients were in treatment, their vital signs stabilizing as the parasite's control weakened. Disaster struck at dusk. A group of 10 infected individuals, including 2 former deputies, breached the high school perimeter, heading directly for the chemical lab producing the neuroblocking agent. Their coordinated movements suggested the parasites had developed a collective defense strategy. Miller received the alert while supervising ultrasound equipment setup. Without hesitation, he ordered the lab evacuated and headed there himself. "They're targeting our countermeasures," he radioed to Sheriff Dawson. "The parasites are showing adaptive intelligence." Arriving just as the infected group smashed through the science wing doors, Miller made a split-second decision. He grabbed a container of the concentrated neuroblocker and positioned himself in the corridor. "This is Colonel Miller," he announced loudly, drawing their attention. Primary threat to parasite survival. As predicted, all 10 infected immediately turned toward him. Miller backed slowly toward the refrigerated processing chamber, deliberately offering himself as the primary target, a tactical diversion leading them away from the lab. Despite his 65 years, Miller moved with calculated precision. Each step backward was measured, maintaining exact distance from his pursuers. When one infected individual lunged, Miller sidestepped with economy of movement that reflected decades of training. He reached the processing facility's entrance, punched in the emergency code, and waited 3 critical seconds as the doors opened. The infected group closed in. A younger man might have panicked, but Miller's pulse barely elevated. His eyes continually scanned, assessed, calculated. Battlefield awareness transferred to biological crisis. "Zone 3 breach imminent," he calmly reported into his radio while backing through the doorway, executing Containment Protocol 7. As the infected rushed him, Miller triggered the emergency cooling system and stepped aside. Supercooled air blasted the entryway, creating an instant wall of cold that disoriented the pursuers long enough for response teams to arrive. The parasites, suddenly exposed to near-freezing temperatures, visibly slowed beneath the skin of their hosts. In confusion, one infected deputy broke through, slashing Miller's arm a shard of broken glass. Blood welled immediately through his torn sleeve. Dr. Vasquez, arriving with the response team, saw the wound. "You've been exposed," she said, voice tight with concern. Miller nodded, already applying pressure. Approximately 4 hours until significant nervous system migration. He spoke with clinical detachment about his own infection. Enough time to complete the ultrasound procedure set up for the final phase. When Dr. Vasquez insisted he receive immediate treatment, Miller refused. "The ultrasound calibration requires my expertise. No one else can properly tune the frequencies." His eyes reflected unwavering resolve. "I'll be your last patient. Military protocol is clear. Mission completion precedes individual medical attention." The Army equipment arrived as night fell. Specialized ultrasonic devices developed from Miller's original research. With methodical precision, despite his deteriorating condition, Miller calibrated each unit and trained Dr. Vasquez's team on a precise application. The first severely infected patients received the treatment under Miller's supervision. The effect was remarkable. Targeted ultrasonic waves destroyed the parasites without harming host tissue. Microscopic examination confirmed complete elimination within 30 minutes of treatment. The frequency disrupts their cellular structure, Miller explained, voice weakening as his own infection progressed. Their adaptation into a more aggressive strain made them more vulnerable to this specific resonance. Their evolution became their weakness. Sarah Collins, the nurse who had been patient 0, was among the first completely cleared of infection. Upon regaining full consciousness, her eyes widened with horror at the memory of her actions while under parasitic control. "I could see everything I was doing," she whispered to Miller, "but I couldn't stop myself. It was like being trapped in my own body." Other recovering patients expressed similar trauma, awareness coupled with helplessness, as their bodies carried out the parasite imperative to spread. Their gratitude toward Miller was overwhelming. "You gave us back ourselves," one man said, grasping the colonel's hand. "How can we ever thank you?" 3 days later, the final statistics confirmed success. Of 157 infected individuals, 151 had fully recovered, with the remaining 6 showing clear improvement. No fatalities. The parasitic outbreak had been completely contained within Mesa Verde, with CDC confirmation that no cases had appeared beyond the town's borders. The modified treatment protocol had worked more effectively than even Miller had predicted, eliminating the parasites with minimal lasting effects on the hosts. As media descended on Mesa Verde, Miller deflected personal recognition. This was standard biological threat response, he insisted to reporters, now fully recovered from his own infection after receiving complete treatment protocol. The success belongs to this community's ability to function as a coordinated unit under crisis conditions. When pressed about his background, Miller simply stated, "Military training prepares you to adapt general principles to specific threats. I just applied what I learned in uniform to a civilian context." Mesa Verde embraced their unexpected hero nonetheless. The local newspaper headline proclaimed, "Retired Colonel's expertise saves town from unknown parasite." The mayor presented Miller with the key to the city during a ceremony where recovered patients formed an honor guard. Most moving was a hand-painted banner hanging across the high school where the crisis had been coordinated. Some heroes wear lab coats instead of capes. Children had added their handprints alongside signatures from every recovered patient. 157 marks of gratitude. When finally coaxed to speak at the ceremony, Miller expressed sentiments that reflected his military background. "In the Army, we learned that mission and people are inseparable," he said. "The protocols and science were just tools. What saved this town was the same thing that wins battles: people coming together with discipline, purpose, and mutual trust." He touched the wound on his arm, now healing. Military service doesn't end with retirement. The oath to protect continues in whatever form threats may take. The CDC formally adopted Miller's 3-phase protocol as the standard response to neuroparasitic outbreaks. The Army Medical Research Institute published an unclassified version of his treatment approach for civilian medical education. Mesa Verde established an annual scholarship in Miller's name for students pursuing careers in medical emergency response. The meat processing facility installed a small plaque commemorating its unexpected role in the town's salvation, featuring Miller's improvised diagram of the treatment setup. As Miller returned to his university position, he reflected on how military experience continues serving the nation long after uniforms are put away. Veterans bring unique perspectives to civilian crises, the ability to function under pressure, to improvise with available resources, to maintain order amidst chaos. Perhaps most importantly, they carry forward the ethos of service above self. In Mesa Verde, that ethos had saved 157 lives, a reminder that some of America's most valuable defenders work quietly among us, ready when needed most. Have you ever encountered someone whose previous military training helped in an unexpected crisis? Or perhaps you know a veteran who continues to serve their community in civilian life. Share your stories in the comments below. If this account of Miller's courageous application of military expertise to save lives inspired you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more remarkable stories of service members making extraordinary differences in our communities.